Welcome into my final 7-round Titans mock draft, and I'm really excited for this one. I'm going to be doing this draft using my own big board, which you can find in my draft guide on Patreon if you're interested. And I'm doing this live. I'm only doing one mock draft, so however the board falls, that's how it falls, and we'll see what we end up with. I'm not going to restart it if, my guy's off the board or whatever. Make sure to subscribe if you haven't already. I'm going to be doing in-depth film breakdowns of every single Titans draft pick, and I'm also trying to do a better job as a YouTuber of pleasing the algorithm. So if you enjoy the video, make sure to leave a like because apparently that's a big thing. But let's get right into it. We are not going to trade up unless there's someone crazy like in the late teens that's available. So we can just let this one play out. All right, so Zion Johnson, Kenyon Green coming off the board right before we pick. If we look at the players who are available, these are the top remaining guys on my big board. I really like Arnold Ebiketie. Not the biggest Bud Dupree fan, but it's hard for me to justify spending a first-round pick on defense. Quarterback is a weird one for me. Taking a quarterback changes not only the entire draft strategy, but really just the entire kind of organizational strategy as far as like where you are as a franchise. My assumption is that if you're drafting a quarterback here in the late first round, that it's just going to be like a redshirt year, while Tannehill plays out probably the last year that he has in Nashville in 2022. If one of these top guys falls deep into the second, I would be okay taking them maybe. I've got 3 receivers with similar grades, 2 offensive linemen with similar grades. So I'd like to trade down if I can and monitor these 5 guys. And then once there's only one of them left, if that happens, then we'll try to trade back up. So I'm going to trade down with Atlanta. They're going to give us 43, 74, and 190. And we're going to give them pick 26. And now I feel a lot better about our draft capital because I think there's a lot of talent in the second to third round in this draft. All right, so Atlanta traded up for Daxton Hill, Trevor Penning, Malik Willis, Tyler Smith off the board. All right, so after the first round, we've got Sky Moore, George Pickens, and Treylon Burks that are all 3 available. We need them to last 10 picks. I feel good about taking either of those guys with our first pick. So let's take this slow. Lewis Seen, Treylon Burks, Boye Mafe, okay. Sky Moore, all right, so this is perfectly equal trade value. We're gonna give them 43 that we got from Atlanta and 90, our 3rd round pick. And they're gonna give us 37 and 107. Looks like a pretty fair deal. I just think that the drop-off from George Pickens to the rest of these guys is pretty significant. And so George Pickens at pick 37, I think that's a pretty popular draft pick for the Titans, just from the mock drafts that I've seen. Seems like people like that pick. Big fan of George Pickens, so we are going to go with him. If we look at the updated draft board, the only thing that I would consider trading up for into the second round would be if Sam Howell or Matt Corral started to fall. I'm not going to trade all the way up to 39, but if they start slipping, then we might consider that. So I'm just going to speed through this, monitor the board as we go, and I'll see you next time we have an update. All right, well, the next time that we had an update was 1 pick later with the Seahawks taking Sam Howell. So now Matt Corral is the last guy at quarterback that I like, and we'll just see if he continues to fall. Doubt the Seahawks double up at QB. Colts don't take a quarterback, and the Texans take Matt Corral. So we can really just kind of speed up, I would say, into like the early 60s, because that's the highest that I would be willing to move up. So let's go there and see where we're at with the draft board. All right, so we are now at pick 74, and let's kind of examine where the board is sitting right now. Not just looking at this pick, but kind of looking into the future. So we got our receiver in the first round. Offensive tackle is definitely a need. If we look at offensive tackles that are available, we've got Luke Gadecki, Kellen Deesh, Max Mitchell, Spencer Burford. Those are the guys I would be considering there. Gadecki and Mitchell are potential guard converts in my opinion, especially Gadecki. Kellen Deesh is kind of like a swing tackle with some size limitations. Spencer Burford is actually probably the best athletically to play tackle because he's got pretty good arm length. If we look at interior offensive line, Dylan Parham, actually the highest player on my board that's still available. Joshua Azidu, we've got some centers. The thing with interior offensive line though is like if you look at all of the players that are available, this is an incredibly deep class of guards and centers. And so as much as I can, I would like to avoid drafting it early here. But honestly, Dylan Parham's my 42nd overall player, my 5th ranked interior offensive lineman, best player available on my board. And so I'm just going to go with Dylan Parham. I think it's a pretty safe pick. He will play left guard, most likely. My expectation would be that Parham is starting left guard day one. All right, so I was heavily considering trading up for this pick, but we held tight and it paid off. And I'm going to take the top offensive tackle that's still available on my board, and that is Spencer Burford out of UTSA. Really good developmental tackle prospect, almost 35-inch arms, played all over the offensive line at UTSA, but was primarily a left tackle. So the reality with this draft is that the Titans need offensive tackles. They're probably not going to get a great prospect unless someone falls to them in the first round. And so my strategy with tackle is that I'd like to take at least 2 swings at it and double dip at the position, get someone who's a little bit more pro ready and can be a swing tackle on day one, and then get a more developmental prospect that can be like a long-term project. And if we look at the board after that pick, I've got 3 tight ends, Cade Otton, Daniel Bellinger, and Jelani Woods with very similar grades. They're all still available. And so I'll be monitoring that position. All right, so I just said that I was going to consider trading up, but Cade Otton comes off the board at the very next pick, and then Jelani Woods goes to Baltimore 2 picks later. So I'm not going to trade all the way up to 111 for Daniel Bellinger. A couple more tight ends come off the board, and we might, yep. All right, so Braxton Jones, that was one of the developmental tackles that I was targeting in the later rounds, and Daniel Bellinger did not get picked. But now that I'm looking at the PFF draft screen, I'm realizing that I made a mistake on my big board, and I said that Kellen Deesh got drafted by someone when he is in reality still on the board. So Kellen Deesh is kind of exactly what I was talking about, pairing up a developmental tackle prospect in Spencer Burford with a swing tackle in Kellen Deesh. I think he can play right and left tackle. He's a great fit for Tennessee's wide zone scheme. Big issue with Kellen Deesh is that he's old, 24.68 years old when he's going to get drafted. He's got 4th percentile arm length, and he's only 301 pounds. And so his anchor is just not good. There's a reason that he's available in the 4th round. I think that he's solid value, probably never going to be like the best tackle in the league, but I think he could develop into a good rotational guy. All right, pick 143, my 2nd highest graded available player, top available tight end, Daniel Bellinger. Pretty much a no-brainer for me. Gonna have a year to develop, be the 2nd or 3rd tight end behind Austin Hooper, but I think he has a ton of upside. Back on the clock at 169, and Joshua Azidu is my 58th overall player, falling to the 5th round. Man, it's just hard to pick a 4th offensive lineman before I've addressed some other positions. So I might have to hold out on that one. The 2 guys that are standing out to me right now are Joshua Williams, cornerback out of Fayetteville State, and Tyson Anderson, safety out of Toledo. But I'm actually going to go with Joshua Williams out of Fayetteville State because if we look at the remaining cornerbacks on my board compared to the other guys that are available, Joshua Williams is definitely more of a projection for me because I don't have access to Fayetteville State tape, and I'm not even sure that having access to that tape would be that useful. You know, it would look like high school players like huddle highlights that you watch, and they're just a completely different athlete than everyone else on the field. But he looked really good at the Senior Bowl, was one of the best corners there. He's got a 9.44 relative athletic score, ticks the box. And I think that he could potentially move to safety if he doesn't work out at corner. He is a little bit tall, and sometimes it's harder for those taller corners to really like turn their hips and play man coverage effectively. But yeah, he's a defensive back with a lot of upside. I think it's always smart to add young, talented players to the defensive backfield. And so we're going to pick Joshua Williams. All right, pick 190. Joshua Azidu is still there, but I just can't take 4 offensive linemen with my first 6 picks. I'm actually deciding between safety Dalaran Turner out of Oklahoma and edge defender Jesse Lukita out of Penn State. And I'm going to go with Lukita. He can be a rotational edge linebacker hybrid. I think works well with the scheme, the defensive scheme that Tennessee runs. He's just a playmaker, making plays at all levels of the field, rushing the passer, fitting the run from an off-ball linebacker position, playing pass coverage, just a versatile kind of chess piece that they can have rotating in on that front. All right, so at 204, I still want to add a third safety. And my favorite safety that's still left on the board is Dalaran Turner. So I'm going to draft him. And then the last need that I have is I'd like to get a third down back. And so let's just go to 219 and just take the best guy that's still on the board. Okay, looking at the running backs that are still available, like I said, I want someone with a receiving skill set, someone who's a good pass blocker. Honestly, my favorite guy on this list for the Titans is Tyler Goodson out of Iowa. Played in probably the most zone-heavy scheme in college football. Really reliable pass catcher, reliable pass blocker. Just not a very physical runner. Like that was the first thing that I noticed with Tyler Goodson is he just doesn't break tackles. So I'm not really that high on Tyler Goodson, but he's just coming in to compete, potentially fill a role and be a backup player. So I feel good taking Tyler Goodson with our last pick. All right, so this is the final mock draft. We got George Pickens, who first round talent. We expect him to be a contributor day one. Dylan Parham, the expectation should be starting left guard on day one. Not sure how high they are on Jamarco Jones. I know they said he was a starter, but I would expect Parham to win that job. Spencer Burford will compete for the right tackle job, as will Kellen Diesch. Daniel Bellinger will hopefully play a role and potentially develop into a tight end 1. And then we got 3 dart throws on the defensive side of the ball and finished up with a third down back. Overall, pretty happy with this mock draft. Like I said, this was just kind of like freestyle, not planning it, not going back, not trying to get the perfect mock, just sort of trying to simulate draft night. Like, here it is. This is what you've got to choose from. So pretty happy with this mock draft. Make sure to subscribe and leave a like. Also, check out my Patreon if you want access to my draft guide and a bunch of extra content. I just posted a 7-round mock draft with trades for every single team. Took me the entire weekend to do. And I've got an Excel file with all the picks and all the teams, different hauls and everything. So make sure to check that out. And thank you for watching.